We want to remind our listeners that this program is for informational and educational purposes only and not intended to substitute for professional veterinary medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The Animal Medical Center does not recommend or endorse any products or services advertised by SiriusXM.
Welcome to Ask the Vet with Dr. Ann Hohenhaus. This is the place to talk about your pets and get advice from the top veterinarian from the Animal Medical Center in NYC. Hear from the leading authorities on animals and ask your questions. Now, here's your host, Dr. Ann Hohenhaus.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Vet, the podcast for people who love their pets and want the latest in pet health and animal news. I'm your host, Dr. Ann Hohenhaus. I'm a senior veterinarian here at the Schwarzman Animal Medical Center, and I also serve as Director of Pet Health Information. Today, we're looking ahead to a milestone in the dog world. The Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show is celebrating its 150th year. The sesquicentennial show begins January 31 with daytime events at the Javits Center, and for evening events, it moves to Madison Square Garden on February 2 and 3, with the Best in Show competition on February 3rd. To help us mark this historic year, I'll be joined by Dr. Donald Sturz, the president and show chairman of the Westminster Kennel Club. We'll talk about what's new for the 150th show, what goes on behind the scenes, and why this event still matters for dogs and dog lovers everywhere. I'm really looking forward to our conversation because the Westminster Kennel Club show is one of my most favorite work-related activities to attend. The Schwarzman Animal Medical Center is the only Level 1 veterinary trauma center in New York City. We have 115 years of being the very best place for your pet. If you're seeking advice on maintaining your pet's health, I'm here to help. Just send me your questions at askthevet@amcny.org, and I'll answer your questions on next month's show. If you don't have a pen and pencil available, I'll give that email address later on in the show. And now it's time for our trending animal of the month.
It's time for the internet's most talked about animal.
The Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito, California, recently responded to an urgent call. Desperate, almost childlike cries were drifting across the waters of Morro Bay. The team at the center sprang into action along with the Morro Bay Harbor Patrol, and they soon discovered the source of the cries. A lost sea otter pup, only about 2 weeks old. At that age, a pup cannot fend for themselves, meaning the pup's only hope of remaining in the wild depended on finding its mother. After safely scooping up the pup, whom they named Caterpillar, the team devised a clever plan. They recorded little Caterpillar's cries and played the audio from a speaker as they traveled along the coastline in a boat. And after a 2-hour search, a female otter approached, following the sound from side to side as the team moved the speaker and observed her behavior. Once they were confident she was looking for her pup, the team lowered Caterpillar into the water. She immediately gathered him up onto her chest, carefully inspected him, and after they confirmed the pair was safe and behaving normally, the team backed away, wishing them both long and happy lives. You can watch the heartwarming reunion by visiting the Marine Mammal Center's website at www.marinemammalcenter.org. Now, if you're interested in marine mammals, the center has education programs not only for veterinary healthcare workers, for zoo staff, but also youth, adults, and families. And a shout out to one of my colleagues from Cornell's Veterinary Teaching Academy who runs these wonderful programs. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest, Dr. Donald Sturz. Dr. Sturz is president and show chairman of the Westminster Kennel Club, a role he assumed in 2023 after a lifetime in the sport. He began showing dogs at age 10 and became a standout junior handler and was junior showmanship finalist at Westminster 3 times, later ranking as the nation's #1 junior handler for 3 straight years. He's trained and exhibited in multiple AKC venues and has judged major dog shows worldwide since 1990, including being Best in Show judge at Westminster in 2022. And he was named Judge of the Year in 2020. Outside the ring, Dr. Sturz is a clinical psychologist and a retired suburban school district superintendent. Dr. Sturz, welcome to Ask the Vet, and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Anne. I'm happy to be here.
So I always ask my guests to start. Tell me about your pets. What animals are in your home now?
Well, and hopefully they'll behave themselves and not interrupt the interview. But I have four dogs at home. We have a Frenchie named Emmett, who's 10 and a half years old. We have a bull terrier named Lola. She's 6 and a half. We have a Pekingese named Fiona, who's actually been to Animal Medical Center. She's 2 years old. And I have a new Pekingese puppy named Scotty, who's been taking the show scene by storm. He's only 10 months old. He's already a champion, and he's the youngest Pekingese to ever win an all-breed Best in Show. So we've got quite a menagerie here in Brooklyn.
So are your two peaks related?
They are. Actually, Scotty is sired by Wasabi, who's the famous peak who went Best in Show at Westminster. And Wasabi is the brother of Fiona's mother. So they are, she's his aunt.
So you started showing dogs at a really young age. What do you remember about that first time you went into the show ring?
Well, this all started. I mean, I have to thank my sister because she had a significant fear of dogs, and my parents thought the best way to help her to get past that was to get a dog. And the family next door had a golden retriever, and they asked what breeder they had gotten their golden retriever from, and my parents contacted those individuals, and we got our first golden retriever, Sheriff. And the breeders invited us to what was called a puppy match, kind of a casual, fun outing. And they would have, kind of this practice dog show. And so they encouraged, me to take the puppy in the ring. And so they put a show lead on him and just said, just do what the judge tells you to do. Just, you'll be fine. And, went in the ring with Sheriff and, ran around and did what we were told. It would be wonderful if the story was he won, but he didn't win.
You could say that. We would not know the difference.
But what I will say is I got such a thrill from it. I remember loving the kind of the connection that started being created between him and I in that moment. That was very different from when we would play. Like that was the first kind of remember I was 8 years old. And so it was like the first time of like having, holding this leash and having interaction with the puppy and getting the puppy to do things in a certain way as they were being directed to do. And seeing it start to happen. And I came out of the ring feeling really good about that and having felt a new connection to Sheriff. And I wanted to do it more. And so my parents, thought that was a really great activity, and we went to more match shows, and we ended up getting another golden retriever that was more, so shall we say, competitive, more show quality. Sheriff was our starter dog, and I learned how to do everything on Sheriff. I learned how to groom on Sheriff, so he was very often had, one side looked a lot better than the other because I learn as I went. But we got a second golden retriever named Copper, and she was the start of it all. She was our family's first champion, and she was the first brood female for my parents, and she produced a number of champions, and it went from there. And I will say to this day, I shared with you about Scotty and him starting out. Even after having been on this journey and having experienced tremendous success in lots of different aspects of the sport, the experience of having a new puppy and training them and raising them and establishing that bond and helping them to become their best self, as far as that's what I try to do with a show dog is not get in their way, let them shine. And I still love that. It's what floats my boat, and I often say to people, well, if you had to make a choice, like of all the things that you do in the sport, and you had to pick one, and you wouldn't be allowed to do any of the other things anymore, I would still pick showing a puppy.
So I think I know a little bit about the answer to this question, but I want to hear it from you. And that is, how do the junior showmanship competitions differ from what I see as a spectator watching on TV at home on the sofa on the night of Best in Show?
Sure. So when you're watching, a Westminster on TV, you're seeing the confirmation classes, and the judge there is judging the dogs on their confirmation qualities, right? How closely they match the ideal described in each breed standard, and which dog's in the best condition and having the best night, the best performance, and so on. In junior showmanship, the focus and the emphasis is solely on the juniors' handling abilities. And are they do they have do they have a good connection with their dog? Are they presenting the dog in a breed specific way? Whenever I judge junior showmanship, I look for that. I look for the child who almost disappears, the child who presents the dog, not themselves. And that's a skill, to be able to handle a dog in a way that you almost become invisible. And that's kind of what it's about.
Is junior showmanship breed based?
No, actually, children will compete in classes. All the breeds come in together, and so you would be in the ring. I say when I was showing my golden retriever, I had friends who showed whippets and beagles and poodles and so on. And it was a great experience because kids get to be exposed to lots of different breeds of dogs. And I think the more you know about other breeds, the more you're able to truly understand the essence of your own breed and the things that make each of those breeds special and unique. So I thought it was a great preparation for me. I didn't know where my path would take me, but as a judge, I think those early days of having all of that broad multi-breed experience through junior showmanship really served me well.
And if you look at on the Westminster Kennel Club website and you look at the pictures of junior showmanship, it's very happy kids with a lot of different kinds of dogs. And so that to me is the big difference is that they're learning to be handlers, not learning a specific breed where lots of times you go to the show and you'll see handlers who year after year show the same breed because they're really good with that breed of dog.
Mhm.
So junior showmanship, I think, is something that a lot of people don't probably know too much about because sadly it doesn't get a lot of press because you
Right.
guys got a lot of breeds to cram into an evening's worth of TV.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, I've worked hard to try to change that a bit in that, we really lean into celebrating our juniors through our social media and through our, press coverage. And even to the extent of I was able to get, although not be able to get it on the live broadcast, but I have been able to get it so that it's part of our live streaming platform. So the junior showmanship finals and the junior showmanship preliminaries during the day are all able to be viewed on our live streaming. So that's been a significant change. So I'm really happy about that.
Oh, that sounds wonderful to be able to see the next generation of handlers live or at least in motion.
Yeah, because that's the future, right? That's always the future of any
Mhm.
endeavor, the future of our sport right there.
So you've done it all with dogs. You've been in the showroom as a handler, you've judged best in show, and now you're the leader of the Westminster Kennel Club. What's it like to see this event from all these perspectives?
Well, and I think it's, one of those moments, sometimes you hit those moments in life where you feel like all your paths have converged into one place. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I think this has really kind of pulled from all of my life experiences, both within the dog world, but also in my professional life. And, taking this knowledge of the sport, having participated in the sport from all these different perspectives, but also as a leader, bringing in my experience, as a school administrator and then also, those skills that come along with being a psychologist and understanding how, how people work. So I think that in the planning of the event, I often say to our team, we want to think about the event from all the different perspectives, meaning, it's Number one are the dogs and the exhibitors. Everything is done in the service of making that a wonderful, experience for them. We want to keep them happy and comfortable and well taken care of. The, in addition to that, we have our judges, we have our spectators, we have our club members, we have our sponsors. Everyone's got a different journey in their experience of Westminster. And so our team actually thinks each of those journeys out and plans for each of those different journeys so that everyone who comes to Westminster, no matter what path they're on, that they experience it in the most wonderful way. And I think that's a coming directly from my own experience, coming from so many different perspectives.
Well, so my perspective as a exhibitor sometimes and as a spectator other times is the Javits Center is so much more comfortable than the back rooms of the garden ever used to be. I understand the garden is a magical place. It's an icon in New York and in the sporting world, but it was just too crowded back there. And so it was so much nicer at the Javits Center last year. And there's room for everyone to come and see the beautiful dogs that there are to be seen and talk to people who own the dogs and meet wonderful animals that you've never seen before. This morning we were talking about Lundahoons, and I said, okay, a trivia question for today. What's the dog that's the puffin hunting dog? And people are like, they're protected. No one hunts puffins. And I said, I'm sorry, but there is a puffin hunting dog. And so then that was the challenge everyone had of the day was for that dog.
Uh-huh.
So it's just a wonderful opportunity to see all these great dogs that you maybe heard of, but you would never see walking around on the streets of your neighborhood or even in New York City.
Yeah, so true. And the entries just closed on November 21st, and I just got an entry breakdown. And I'm happy to say, and this is news happening right in the moment. We are able to say that we, definitely exceeded our limit because we limit our show to 2,500 champions. We far exceeded that in the entries, and we have every single breed that's eligible to compete is represented this year, which is doesn't always happen because there is a random selection component to part of the entry system. And so some years we don't have every breed. This year we do. And we have people coming from each of the 50 states, in addition Puerto Rico, and from 20 other foreign countries, we have dogs coming to compete. So it's pretty exciting. I love those statistics.
So, well, what one statistic you didn't give is how many breeds are there eligible to compete?
212.
So it's gonna be speed dog showing on Monday and Tuesday evening to get through 212
Yes.
dogs. That's a
Yes.
lot of dogs to go through.
Yes.
Um,
It's like it's much like I think choreographing a musical actually, making sure that it all gets done, that everybody gets on stage and off stage in time for the next number.
so I want to go back to your big celebration this year because it is the 150th Westminster Dog Show. So is this the oldest sporting event in the United States?
Westminster is the second longest continuously running sporting event, second only to the Kentucky Derby by 1 year. Um,
Oh, that must hurt.
But it is quite a distinction, and and along with that, I think the notion of putting that history, right, 150 years, putting the dog show in the context of New York City history, U.S. history, world history, and all the things that were happening each of those years that under other circumstances might have caused an event not to go on. Westminster persevered every single year, whether there were world wars, whether there was depression, whether there was severe weather, COVID. Westminster found a way, and I think that says a lot about the legacy of the event. I always refer to it as a legacy brand, but it because it is. It's got deep roots, and I think it's become not only important to the sport, but I think it's a part of our culture, and I'm really proud of that.
So where was the first show? Do you know?
The first dog show happened at Gilmore Gardens. And so that was like the precursor to what we know as Madison Square Garden. And so another interesting trivia question is, um, Westminster has the distinction of being one of the very few events that has actually occurred in every version of Madison Square Garden. We're now in the fourth version, and there are not many that can claim that.
Now, why do you know why it's called Westminster?
I do. So the story goes, there was a group of sporting gentlemen who used to get together, as they do, to tell stories about their hunting adventures with their dogs, and at one point it came to them that they should organize a club that made this official, that they were an entity, and they were meeting at the Westminster Hotel in Manhattan, and that's where the name came from, was the place where they were meeting. So the Westminster Kennel Club.
And is since this evolved from gentlemen who hunted with dogs, is that how you have a hunting dog as your mascot on your logo?
That's exactly right. The logo features a pointer named Sensation, which oddly enough, his call name was Don. So that's that's something that I kind of hold dear. I think that's kind of wonderful. But Sensation was one of the first dogs that this group of gentlemen imported as one of their dogs in their kennel, and he became the logo for the organization and remained so. Yeah, so it dates right back to the beginning.
So, just so our listeners understand a term that Dr. Sturz used, he said call name. Most dogs, most show dogs have a name with as many components to it as the King of England does. And the call name is what the family calls the dog.
Sure.
So, can you give me an example of one of your dogs? Like its real name and its call name?
Sure. Let's see. Uh, so Lola, the bull terrier, her registered name is um, Action Classic Starlet at Alaric. Action and Alaric being the two breeders that co-bred her, and Classic Starlet being from the theme of the litter, which was names that all featured the word star. But at home, she's just Lola.
Yeah, that's what I mean. These names are really complicated, and they often have a history or meaning in the background of
Correct.
that name.
That's correct.
And very frequently, litters have themes.
Yes. Yeah.
And whether it's A is your first litter and the B names are your second litter, but it might be other kinds of themes.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's what Dr. Sturz means when he says the call name. It's what you call the pet, but it's not their real name. So Westminster Kennel Club show is 2 years older than the light bulb. Now that's a real interesting little tidbit. Yet it's still vibrant and relevant, and light bulbs have changed a whole lot. How do you balance your tradition with innovation?
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. That really is what I view as the main responsibility for me, as the president and the show chair, is to strike that balance between paying homage to tradition and the legacy, while at the same time keeping the event relevant and moving forward into the future. And so it's a constant review of everything. I review every piece of social media that goes out, and that's one of the lenses that I look at it through. Is it being respectful of Westminster's you know history and tradition, while at the same time engaging a newer, younger audience. And sometimes that's not always so easy, but I think we're doing a good job. We're doing really, really well on social media. I think we've kind of found the nick for that, and that pretty much drives everything that we do at this point. Is just that in order for the event to remain viable for another 150 years, just as the light bulb, right, had to change and evolve over time to meet society's needs and the changes that were occurring that were impacted by that. Westminster has to look at it similarly, and that's what we do on a regular basis here.
So the average person in the United States never gets the opportunity to go to the Westminster Kennel Club show, and they really only see it on TV. Everyone's not as lucky as I am to live in New York, and I've been multiple times. So, what would surprise people that they don't see on TV that happens at the show?
I think probably the biggest thing is that they're seeing the performance, right? When they watch TV, much like I was referring to before, that it's the choreography of that is like a Broadway musical. They're seeing the stage performance, but they see these dogs in this competition being presented at their very best. And I think sometimes people forget that although they are show dogs, they're also someone's pet. And what you would see behind the scenes would be all of the things that each of those people watching at home typically do with their own dogs as far as keeping them comfortable and keeping them happy and snuggling and cuddling and treats and toys and all those sorts of things. Those are all part of a show dog's life. Scotty, when I take him out to shows, I'm still connecting and engaging with him the same way I engage with him at home. And that's on purpose. You want to make the dog show just an extended activity of their life. It's not their entire life. And so I think that's probably the most important thing is to remember when you're looking at these amazing show dogs, remember that they are somebody's pet and they should hug the dog that's on the couch with them as if they're a Westminster show dog because they're just as important.
I'm sure that their dog at home on the sofa could be a show dog.
Absolutely.
Because the dogs that are on the sofa are just as wonderful as the beautiful dogs you have at the show. Although I do absolutely adore how beautiful those dogs are. Here at the Animal Medical Center, we see wonderful dogs. They're just not always at their best when they come to see us. And so it's a big treat for me to see the dogs in person at the show who are at their very best, because I don't always get to see dogs like that. So it's a special treat for me to get to go to the show. So we're talking here about appearances of dogs, and some people have a misconception that dog shows are only about a pretty face. What do you wish people understood about the standards for dogs in the show ring?
Mhm. As I had mentioned earlier, the standard, I like to refer to it as like the blueprint for a breed, in that it gives you all of the dimensions and all of the details and so on that go into making an excellent representative of that breed. And that blueprint is always based on the breed's intended function and the breed's history. And so for me, what I've always enjoyed is learning that about the different breeds. What were they originally bred to do? What do they currently do as, a companion? And their conformation, their structure, their proportions, their coat texture, the size and shape of their ears, the way they carry their tail. Each of these breeds, there's a reason for all of those things that relates to the job that they were meant to do. And so even a breed that was meant to just be a companion dog, those dogs still needed to be physically functional, right? They needed to be able to, move about the home and follow the owner around the home, and they had to have certain cosmetic details that made them pleasing to look at. So the eyes were a certain shape and color and so on. There's a reason for everything. And so when you're thinking about getting a dog and thinking about whether a breed is a good fit for you, I think that's always good to get a sense of like, well, what were they actually bred to do? Because a lot of these dogs retain those instincts even to today, even if they're not still actively used in that way. And so say a breed that was intended to be a herding dog will probably be a little bit more independent and may need a little bit more attention to having a job to do throughout the day, as opposed to, say, my Pekingese, who's more or less a companion animal, who's used to being catered to and just kind of hugged and cuddled a lot. So I think that's what's important here is to kind of see what will be a good fit for you based on that. And when the judges are looking at these dogs in the ring, they're thinking about that just as much. Construction, when they're moving, when they're gating, it's not just, oh, how prettily they do it, but do they do it in the way that's functional and efficient, right? You want the dog to move with, cover the most ground with the least amount of effort. And they can only do that if they're built correctly. Are they moving in the way that they would move? Is it reflective of the way that they would move when they're doing their job? And so things like that. So there's a lot more that's going on in the assessment of these dogs beyond just looking pretty.
So I'm going to be bold here and ask a question about a breed that's not probably judge. So for the listeners, judges have to be certified to judge certain breeds, and they have to be certified to judge groups, and they have to be certified to be a judge for best in show. You just don't walk out there and say, I like this dog. That's not how it works. So I'm going to ask a question about poodles,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you're a poodle certified judge or not.
I am.
Okay, perfect then. So, what about that poodle haircut? Like, how did that poodle haircut evolve from a functional standpoint? They got poofs all over the place. What were those poofs for?
I love that question, Anne. So actually, poodles is a breed that I was had a lot of involvement with. I actually got my first standard poodle when I was 13, and got very involved in that breed. And I've judged it for a long time. I've judged their national twice. I'll be judging it for the third time next year. Um, and what's really wonderful about understanding that trim that you see is that it really truly was functional for the standard poodle as a retriever. They were originally used as a water retriever, and to this day are still really good at it if people give them a chance to do so. And so if you think about it, the body coat is meant to cover the lungs, the hearts, the organs, right? So that it's keeping all of that warm. They then clip the legs to free up the legs to be able to run and swim. And then the pom-poms that you're talking about are around all the joints. So that's why you see pom-poms on the front legs around the pasterns, on the rear legs around the hock joints, and also on the hip joints up top. And then the pom-pom on the end of the tail was there. And if you notice, they clip the legs, right? So they're free of hair, frees them up. The pom-pom on the end of the tail was there so that they could tie a ribbon to it so that they could see the dog when they were out in the field in high grass. And so there really was a purpose and a function. Now, when they're doing that, it's obviously a much shorter cut than what you'll see in the ring. In the ring, it's much more stylized and glamorized for sure. But that was the original purpose of that trim.
Such a great deal about the poodle haircut. I love that. So, you're also a clinical psychologist in addition to being a dog lover, dog shower, dog judge. Um, how does that influence your thinking with your dogs and how people have a relationship with their dogs?
Mhm. Um, well, I think, my experience as a psychologist was specifically focused on working with children and adolescents and their families, and I've since retired from that clinical role. But I would say, understanding and being more of a cognitive behaviorist in my ideology, I would say that I think that's helped me with regards to understanding behavior and why it occurs and why it continues to occur and how you can change behavior and so on. So I think it serves me well in how I work with my dogs or helping others work with their dogs. And I think it also helps me understand how the people who I'm engaging with, as far as their behaviors, their emotional reactions, in that being able to put it in the context of like why is that happening and trying to understand it from that perspective and giving people some grace sometimes, right? That the behavior is serving a purpose for them that maybe not is not serving me so well in that moment, but understanding where it's coming from.
So, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm so happy to have my poodle haircut question answered finally. I've been wondering about that for years. So, I want to thank Dr. Donald Sturz, who is the head of Westminster Kennel Club. We're all looking forward so much to seeing your beautiful dogs at the Javits Center during the day, at Madison Square Garden at night, or on TV if you can't come to New York City. And I'll look forward to seeing you there myself. I can't wait to go.
I look forward to seeing you there as well. And thanks so much for having me today. This was fun.
Oh, you're very welcome. If you have a question about your pet's health, don't forget to email me at our Ask the Vet email. It's really easy to remember. It's askthevet@amcny.org, and I'll answer your question on next month's show. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, it'll be time for the animal news.
We're back with Dr. Ann Hohenhaus on Ask the Vet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ask the Vet. It's time for today's animal news.
It's time for Animal Headlines, the biggest animal news from across the world.
Our first news story today is about a study that suggests raccoons living in cities may be taking early steps towards domestication. Researchers at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock found that urban raccoons are developing physical changes, including slightly shorter snouts compared to raccoons in rural areas. The study challenges the idea that domestication begins only when humans intentionally breed animals. Instead, the researchers say the process can start much earlier, when wild animals get comfortable living around people and benefiting from the human environment. In this case of the raccoons, helping themselves to our trash. Animals that can tolerate being near humans without posing a threat tend to have an advantage, since cities offer easy and reliable food sources. Over the course of time, calmer animals do better, and those behavioral changes can come with physical ones. Scientists call this the domestication syndrome, and it includes traits such as shorter faces, smaller heads, changes in coat color. One leading theory ties these traits to early developmental cells known as neural crest cells. To investigate whether raccoons are starting to show these kinds of changes, the research team analyzed nearly 20,000 photos of raccoons from across the United States. And they found that city raccoons had snouts about 3.5% shorter than those living further from human activity. An early hint that some wildlife may be evolving differently as they adapt to life among us. Now, if you're really interested in reading more about how evolution occurs, you should pick up a copy of a book called Beak of the Finch, which is a fascinating read and talks about finches in the Galapagos Islands that are evolving as we speak even today. Our second story is good news, and it's about insect-eating birds in France. These birds may actually be on the road to recovery following the European Union's 2018 ban on neonicotinoids, one of the most commonly used pesticides. Bird populations have increased by about 2 to 3%, and the theory is that decreasing pesticide use increases the food source of these insect-eating birds. This rise may seem small to you, but scientists say it's an encouraging sign that recovery of bird populations is possible, and this information could help guide future conservation efforts. Collecting this data, though, was no easy feat. Volunteer ornithologists with the French Breeding Birds Survey visited more than 1,900 sites across France between 2013 and 2018. And they repeated that again in 2019 to 2022, keeping tabs on 57 different bird species. And while their data reflects only local bird populations, researchers hope that other insect-eating animals like bats and even fish might be seeing similar benefits from the pesticide ban. Neonicotinoids are still widely used in the United States, and they contribute to the decline of local bird populations and raise a host of health concerns for both humans and wildlife. Some states are beginning to take action. For example, the passing of Birds and Bees Protection Act in 2023 will ban the use of these pesticides on lawns and gardens starting in 2027 in New York State. It will take several years before we can evaluate the impact of the ban, but based on this data from France, our hopes are high for improvement in our bird populations. And finally, our third story has something good about AI, rather than the gloom and doom about the impact on the job market. Pet owners know the panic that sets in when their dog or cat goes missing, and it happens a lot. About 10 million pets are reported lost in the United States each year. A free online tool called Petco Love Lost, run by Petco's nonprofit arm, is helping reunite lost pets with their families using AI. The service uses facial recognition to match photos of lost pets with animals listed by shelters, rescues, and community members. Its database draws from more than 3,000 shelters nationwide, plus neighborhood networks like Nextdoor and Ring's neighborhood app. The AI scans use hundreds of visual details like eye shape, whiskers, and coat markings to find the best matches, even among pets that look very similar. Owners can upload a photo of their missing pet, and if the pet has a microchip, that number can be added too. Microchips are still the gold standard for identification of lost pets, but image matching can help when a chip can't be traced or information is out of date. Petco Love says the tool has helped reunite more than 100,000 pets with their families. They also remind pet owners that lost pet situations can attract scammers, especially online, so they recommend keeping communications on the site, avoiding any requests for money, and verifying details before meeting anyone. Petco Love Lost is free and available nationwide at petcolove.org/lost. And one word of advice to pet owners is keep a current photo of your pet's face on your phone, not just the cute videos of what they're doing, but an actual nice headshot, so that if your pet does go missing, you have something to upload at Petco's Love Lost website. And now it's time for questions from our listeners. Our first question today is from Laura O.
Laura asks, my dog Sally has a red ring along her gums. Our vet recommends doing anesthesia for dental x-rays, a deep cleaning, and possibly extractions all in one procedure. It feels like a big step. Is that standard, or are there other options we should try first?
So Sally's owner has a concern that many pet owners have, and that is about dental procedures for their pets. But the recommendation that Sally's owner is getting is absolutely the standard of care. Veterinarians can't do a full exam of a dog or cat mouth without general anesthesia, and anesthesia allows them to probe under the gums for any pockets of periodontal disease that need to be treated and managed. The general anesthesia also allows you to do dental x-rays and then remove any teeth that are abscessed or have other problems that require their extraction. So while I agree, it seems like a big procedure compared to what we might get for dentistry. Remember, we don't have to be anesthetized. We just have to sit in that chair and hold our mouth open for what seems to be forever. And so I think your vet has made the standard recommendation for Sally, and I think it would be a good one to proceed with. Best of luck to both you and Sally. Our next question comes from Paulina R.
And Paulina asks, how can I enrich the life of my 16-year-old cat, Masha, who's very food motivated but not interested in play, and who can only eat a prescription hydrolyzed protein diet? She's on steroids and seems hungry all the time, and I want to give her comfort and variety in her senior years without compromising her health. We've had success adding small amounts of plain boiled zucchini and romaine as safe treats, but I'd love other enrichment ideas or diet-compatible options for her. And our other cat, who's 12 and is also on a strict diet.
So first, let me tell you what a hydrolyzed protein diet is. Protein is made up of little subunits called amino acids, and they're hooked together in a certain order to create different proteins. A hydrolyzed diet is a diet where the protein is broken up into its little amino acid components. And for some pets with intestinal disease, that makes the food much more tolerable and decreases their vomiting and diarrhea. But giving treats to these pets, as Paulina knows, is very difficult because regular treats do not contain hydrolyzed protein usually. So it's impossible for me, without knowing anything about Masha other than she's on a hydrolyzed diet, to make a recommendation for other treats. And so I have to suggest that Paulina talks to her veterinarian about what other kinds of treats might be appropriate for Masha and Masha's friend. The other thing to consider would be what we call feeding toys. And these might be puzzle toys where you hide the hydrolyzed diet in the toy so the cat gets entertained by figuring out the puzzle to get the food, or using something called a lick mat, which is a little silicone mat with grooves and lines in it that the food hooks into, and then your cat has to work a little harder than normal to get their food. And that works, those lick mats work very well with canned food. So I would suggest changing up how Masha is fed rather than changing the food, and then check with your veterinarian about what the appropriate kind of treat would be for this special needs cat. And our last question today comes from Morgan S.
And the question is, my 11-month-old dog wears a flat collar all the time, even indoors. My friend has 2 dogs and takes their collars off as soon as they get home from a walk. Do you recommend that dogs wear collars 24/7, or are there specific times they should be removed for safety or skin coat health? I've heard conflicting advice.
So I think the reason that Morgan is hearing conflicting advice is perhaps because different dogs have different living situations. So here in New York City, dogs have to get out of the apartment on the elevator, go downstairs, get past the front doorman to get out of the building. And so they don't have a big risk of escaping into the street or into the yard. And so maybe people who live in apartments take their dog's collar off because they don't need that collar for identification because they aren't going to escape. But if you have a dog who lives in a house that has a front door and a back door and a backyard and a door, somebody that comes to the door and rings the buzzer and your dog can slip out, that dog maybe needs a collar all the time. Because we know that dogs and cats who wear collars are more readily identified than dogs even with microchips. So a dog or cat can never lose its microchip because it's implanted. But if I find a dog on the street, I've got to take it to a facility with a microchip reader, and that delays reuniting the pet with its owner. And your dog has a collar on, I can just phone you up and say, hey, I found your dog. Can you come pick it up? If the collar slips off, you've always got that microchip as a backup. So I don't know a medical reason that a dog needs its collar off when it comes home, but it may just be that the owners don't like the jangle of the collar, or the pet doesn't really like the collar and scratches at it a lot. But I don't think there's a medical reason the collar needs to come off, and some dogs might, for safety reasons, need always to wear their collar. So, Morgan, I hope that helps you figure out what to do with your pet's collars. And now we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, there'll be news from the AMC's Usedan Institute.
We're back with Dr. Ann Hohenhaus on Ask the Vet.
Hi, and welcome back to Ask the Vet. And now it's time for important information from AMC's Usedan Institute for Animal Health Education. As we move through the holiday season, AMC's Usedan Institute would like to share a few important reminders about keeping pets safe. First, the familiar ones. Keep pets away from holiday foods, especially fatty meats, chocolate, grapes and raisins, onions and garlic, and alcohol. A big reminder, No bones at all, cooked or raw. They can splinter and cause obstructions. And just this week, AMC's already taken 2 bones out of dogs that got into some holiday festivities when they shouldn't have. Now for a few hidden holiday hazards. Look out for lithium button batteries. They're in toys, remotes, and even some animated decorations. They can cause serious burns if chewed or swallowed. Watch out for those gifts wrapped underneath the tree, especially if they contain food. Dogs will sniff out a snack right through the packaging and may eat the whole thing, gift wrap, ribbon, and all. Keep an eye on your house guests' bags and purses. They often contain gum with xylitol, chocolate, or medications that a curious pet can find in a split second and open the container and help themselves. And finally, with all the comings and goings this time of year, pets can easily slip out of an open door before anyone realizes it. And as our earlier listener asked, if this be a time of year to leave those collars on all the time, be sure that the collars have their ID tags or the phone number sewn into the collar, and double check the microchip registry so that if your dog slips the collar, somebody can find out that they're missing from your home. Be sure to set up a quiet, safe space for your pets to relax away from all the commotion and the parties of the holiday. If you're interested in more pet health and safety tips, visit the Usedan Institute online at amcny.org/Usedan Institute. I'd like to thank Dr. Donald Sturz of the Westminster Kennel Club for joining me today. If you want more information on the Westminster Kennel Club show that's coming soon, be sure to visit their website at westminsterkennelclub.org. Don't forget, if you want to know more about your pet's well-being or looking for pet health advice, just email me at askthevet@amcny.org, and I'll answer your questions on next month's Ask the Vet program. The Ask the Vet podcast can be accessed on the SiriusXM app, across all major platforms, and on AMC's website. All of this thanks to AMC's longstanding partnership with SiriusXM. Be sure to follow us on social media. At Facebook, it's The Animal Medical Center, and on X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram, it's at AMCNY. I'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to give the Ask the Vet podcast a review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast so you receive new episodes as soon as they are available. I and everyone at the Animal Medical Center wants to wish everyone a very happy and pet-safe holiday season, and we look forward to bringing you more episodes of Ask the Vet in 2026. Happy New Year, everyone.